All right.
What a day.
Back in the office. How can it be a day already where it's
You mean a week?
first thing in the morning?
Oh, you mean a day already? Yeah, no, it's a day already.
It's crazy to think it's already been a week. Or that it's only been a week since our last show.
Yeah, we've been scrambling with getting everyone ready for demo day and Elevate and everything else.
I'm excited. Elevate's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
We have our fancy pens and notebooks here.
Mhm.
Companies are working their butts off right now around the clock to get their pitches dialed in.
Should we do any kind of intro, like hi?
Yeah.
We didn't do
We
that.
are doing an intro.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
I'll leave it. I'll just let you be, Ben. You do your thing.
Okay, sounds good. That was our intro. Welcome back to Gateway Office Hours. I'm very impressed that we've been able to do. Is this our 7th week in a row now?
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah. Wow. Because last week was episode 6, right? Yeah.
Yeah, episode 6, cluster
Cluster
something. So we're back and we're answering your questions. A few little shout outs in the beginning, as we always do. But yeah, it's a beautiful day over here in Oakland. We're getting ready for Elevate. That's coming up on Tuesday, preceded by our private investor demo day. So if you are interested in attending that, please reach out to us. If you're interested in the conference on Tuesday, elevatecon.com. And I don't know if you know, but registration is looking really strong. It seems like there's going to be 400 or 500 people there.
Oh, cool. I haven't looked. I don't know if you know, but at the bottom of the screen it says elevateconference.com. People can go
I
there.
didn't.
Okay.
Look at that.
So
it's right there.
I added that this morning. So yes.
You're so good.
South by Southwest voting is over though.
So I'm going to have to announce 3 things
We don't
instead
have to
of
say
4.
that anymore. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
great.
And next week 2 things.
Next week, 2 things.
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
Your
right,
life's getting
because
easier.
Elevate's done. We'll find something
Yeah,
else to do. The screen just went off, so I hope that we're still
Oh, well.
live.
I assume we're good.
And we're good. Okay.
That's just our own internal problems. Okay.
And the other thing is, yeah, we still have a bunch of work to do on the Gateway application. So if you sent your applications in, don't worry, we're getting to it. We'll be scheduling interviews for first week in October. But right now, the full focus is pretty much on the first cohort and making sure they're beautiful on stage next week.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You know, it's weird, right? We spend a lot of time. We spent a lot of time really making sure their companies were dialed in, and we're realizing that like it's all about pitching on demo day. It's less about the company, which is sad. It should be about the company, and so I feel actually better about the companies than I do about the pitches. But hopefully we'll fix that.
Which is kind of shameful considering our background as pitch coaches.
Yes, but that's okay.
And my Twitter handle, Pitch to Ben.
That's
So
true. That's true.
You guys over there better not embarrass.
Yeah, the guy giving us a thumbs up over there. I hope you're working on your pitch.
But seriously, thanks to the Elevate team. You guys have been busting your butts in and out of the Gateway office. Eric and Brandon from the Investing in Cannabis team. Alicia, Corinne.
Yeah. And as always, thanks to Alicia for producing.
Yes.
She's
thank
always
you, Alicia.
the third person.
On the ones
here.
and the twos in the back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, SSDP, who's housed here in our office for Gateway Works, is also going to be involved with Elevate and the beneficiary of some of the funds that we bring in. And then, yeah, companies like Headset and all of our other awesome partners that are helping support the conference. This is going to be a really good show.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to our show.
Yes.
Awesome. We have some questions that came in, and we're just going to kind of no storyline this time.
I actually have. This is the one time I literally have no idea what you're going to say.
I'm really
next.
excited.
I don't know what these questions are.
I think there's going to be some good content. I'm hoping.
Okay.
If not, we'll just cut the show short and call it a day.
Right.
All right. First one, Sesh Oakland. That's SESSH Oakland on the Instagram and the Twitter. All right. Considering Denver's initiative, NSCCPP, don't worry, you're not going to need to know this, for cannabis consumption in businesses, made the ballot and topped the normal back dispensary only initiative. How do you see the on-site cannabis consumption segment developing in California and nationally over the next few years? And I really like this question for us. Typically, I try to stay away from the political aspect. And so, like, I didn't even, like, jump in and start researching, like, what was NSCCPP versus the normal BACT initiative and all that kind of stuff. But what I did want to talk about, and what I think we are geared up to talk about, is what does like on-site consumption mean for the industry? Like, how do we think that's going to guide how products are developed? And I would actually argue, would Gateway exist if there wasn't some sort of plan for there to be like on-site consumption, and how does that relate to dispensary only, retail versus medical? There's a whole can of worms that we could really talk about, but I know that when we're talking about brand building, the brand war, a lot of that, hinges on whether things are going to have more of a retail bent or more of a medical bent.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I was going to kind of go that direction and say, a large percentage of this is going to, this is going to depend really on regulation, so it's going to depend on whether things are predominantly medical or recreational, right? And that depends on taxes. Assuming people adopt a legal framework wherein there's medicinal and adult use as two separate categories, which isn't necessary. I mean, you could just adopt adult use and say forget medicinal and whatever, but that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing people adopt two separate categories, or talk about two separate categories, and where one is taxed a lot less, right? I mean, to a large extent, it's going to depend on what the tax situation is like, right? I mean, if you overtax the adult use, you're going to end up with a medicinal model where you've got dispensaries, and I don't know that I view on-site consumption as more of the alcohol model, right? It's the bars, right? It's alcohol bars.
Sure.
Is that really a medicinal model? I don't know. Do you view that as a medicinal model?
Well, no. I mean, this is the constant like conversation, right? Like, is cannabis or marijuana or whatever you call it, like, is it medicinal? Is it an herb? Like how do you classify? And that's the toughest thing.
Well, I mean, I think that's a bad question.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a bad. Like, how do you classify?
Well, you can't. That's the hardest part. It's hard to classify, right?
Right.
There is medicinal use. There is recreational use. Like,
Right.
It's just the way it is. And I think what will happen in the future is, and it's maybe not going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. Like, 2 to 3 years is long enough to get that first piece of legislation in. What is going to happen in the years to come after that is, I think, trying to reach that equilibrium where there is a medicinal, there's big pharmas coming in. There's going to be medicinal applications that are recognized and hopefully pushes down the scheduling of the drug and all that kind of stuff. But there will be applications.
Removes the scheduling of the drug, Ben.
Sorry.
Removes it.
Removes.
I don't want to schedule II cannabis.
I don't want it either. I'm just, reality and what we want isn't always the same thing. Though we can probably get there through advocacy and the efforts that we're working on.
But the question was really about how on-site consumption would change the landscape from a startup, like an entrepreneurial business perspective. Is that the essence of the question?
The essence is like, okay, do you see the on-site cannabis consumption segment developing in California and nationally over the next few years?
I don't think. Or how do you see it? I mean,
how do you see it?
I partly don't want to answer it, which I know is a bad thing to say for this, but no one can answer that question. It depends on.
I can say that it's already started. Our friends over at Magnolia just got an on-site
there's
license.
demand for it. Like, people absolutely want to do it. Like, Harvest does it. Magnolia just got a license to do it. Like, doesn't BPG do it? I think as well.
There's a handful of companies.
No, they don't. Chris is telling me now.
Barbary Coast.
Someone else does it that I'm not thinking of, right? But there are there is demand for it, absolutely. I don't think it's. I don't. You tell me, but what you think. I don't think that on-site consumption is going to fundamentally alter what products appeal to consumers in any way. It may change what it's like to run a dispensary, and running a dispensary may start to have more in common with running a bar.
Sure.
But I don't think it's. I don't think it's going to fundamentally change what products consumers want to use or see. I think it might produce a bigger market for products that are more cumbersome for the average person to play with. So, for example, a dab rig, right? Someone new to the industry isn't going to go out and buy a dab rig and stick it in their kitchen and play around with it. But if you can go, I mean, I did this at Harvest, right? Like, my first dabbing experience was actually at Harvest and on-site. Shout out to Marty and Guild Extracts and but I wouldn't have gone and purchased all of that and brought it home to try it, and like so it does allow me to explore cannabis in a way that I wouldn't have. So I think there's value there, and so that might drive demand for products that would be very cumbersome for consumers to go out and obtain themselves. So I think that could have an effect.
I think it'd also actually be a nice kind of window into these kind of like craft cultivators, right? Like it's going to keep them kind of in business to be able to like get their products into these type of
I mean, you can imagine like a cannabis tasting thing, right? Where you're like, okay, well, I normally go buy Budweiser, but now I'm gonna spend an evening going and checking out all these craft beers. It's kind of a similar model. You could see that. But to make a prediction about how it's going to shake out in California and then nationally, I have no idea. I mean, it depends. Some legislator could get their hair up their butt about it and ban it or change something or do whatever, or there could be some car accident that gets blamed on marijuana and suddenly sentiment shifts and people want to restrict consumption on site. And I mean, I don't, the focus right now is just like get it to be legal.
Yes Well, I mean, and until it is like fully legal, like I mean, this is going to be a highly regulated segment of the industry. Like there's going to be very specific zones that you can do them. There's going to be hour restrictions. I mean,
well, and we had this conversation the other day, right? Yeah, we also had this conversation. Oh, wait, maybe you actually were. Maybe you weren't in this. Sorry, I had this conversation. Sorry, I had this conversation with a venture capitalist the other day who was doing. They've made a couple investments in edibles and stuff, and we were talking about the difficulty with driving while intoxicated and measuring it for marijuana. I know Stanford's working on a way to do that, but
they're actually testing a breathalyzer unit here.
Right, but the issue is I think more than alcohol, it affects people. The variance and effect on people is wider than alcohol. So you can make a more confident statement about if your blood alcohol level is a certain amount, you're unfit to drive. You can't make that statement as confidently with cannabis.
Right.
Also driving. Driving while, quote, intoxicated on cannabis is actually much safer than driving on alcohol. You tend to drive more slowly and be focused. And
some people require it because they are using it as a medicine, right? Like if they're using it as a medicine that helps them focus and analyze data or whatever it is, and like maybe it makes you a better driver. I'm not saying that it is. Don't crucify me, but like it could.
Right. And so the issue, I think, is that it's just so unclear how to, from a public safety perspective, how that would be regulated. And I imagine if people started to talk about on-site consumption a lot more at the kind of state and national level where the public got involved, that would immediately be something that people would bring up, and people have brought up, like, well, then we're going to have people driving from the consumption place back to their house and blah, 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 and that's a problem. And then there's going to have to be discussion about, is it actually a problem? How big of a problem is it? If it is a problem, how do you measure the people that are a problem and aren't a problem? Right. And how do you deal with the variance and how it affects people differently? It's kind of complex. So,
as is everything with cannabis.
yeah, as is everything with cannabis. So, I don't know. I truly believe that eventually we'll get to a steady state where it's treated like alcohol in some respect, maybe some variants, and there will be on-site consumption as a result of that. We will get to a state. I don't mean State of the Union, but like we will get to a point at which on-site consumption is kind of a normal thing. How long that'll take?
Yeah,
no idea.
Well. Congratulations to Debbie, Amber, Magnolia team for getting your license. I'm excited to see the place.
Yeah.
They have like a whole like restaurant.
Oh, it's gonna be
that the-
awesome.
Like the dispensary, restaurant, consumption lounge.
It's
like,
gonna be awesome.
It's pretty, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Excited about that.
I kind of feel like we fucked that question up. So sorry.
I don't think so. It was a very broad question. We addressed it how we know how to address things, and that's the business side. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a transition. I know I said no storylines, but if I were to go out and like pitch a business that hinged on that, there might be some weaknesses that could be like poked, right? And like
Yeah.
your job as a founder is to walk this line of pitching a strong vision, being confident, but also being like truthful and transparent about like what your hurdles are, right? And
Yeah.
your barriers to scalability. So Patrick with Flora, one of our cohort companies, often has a lot of questions, but a lot of good ones. And one of his questions was, when balancing transparency and authenticity, with the showing of confidence in the light of these restrictions, like where do you draw the line? Like if you've gone through a tumultuous kind of like product development, like how transparent do you have to be? And it's I'm like, these are very honest questions. Like we've gone through our own like hurdles, and it's like, how open are you, and how do you remain confident without telling a false story?
Well, I mean, I think there's a little bit of a false dichotomy in there. I think you have to actually be confident.
Yes.
And if the risks are so big and things are so scary for you that you're not actually confident, faking confidence and then trying to figure out what to reveal to investors about what's scary is just not going to work.
Yeah.
So I tend to, I mean, you know me, I tend to be a little bit more just kind of blunt about, well, here are the challenges and like, but here's the upside, and like,
Right.
here's why I think I can overcome those challenges and blah, blah, blah. So I tend to err on the side of just kind of airing your dirty laundry, but also talking about why that's not, why you can overcome that, or why there's things that make that dirty laundry less important than it might seem to be on the surface. The caveat I'll say to that is, that doesn't mean that when you're pitching, you focus on all the things that can go wrong with the business, right? I mean, no one's going to write a check after a 3-minute pitch. So I used this analogy, I think, maybe last week, right? Or maybe, I don't know. Your pitch is the trailer to the movie.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
that was on last week's show. I
right.
believe.
So your pitch is, you don't market sushi as cold dead raw fish, right? But if you go into due diligence on your sushi sale, you admit that it's cold dead raw fish at some point. That's just not how you originally like talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I think Patrick in particular, right, struggles because he sees all the problems that could possibly exist,
Which is a great
which is
characteristic
what you want
of
in a founder,
entrepreneur.
right? Right, because it allows him to avoid those problems.
Yeah.
Right. But I think he has a little bit of consternation over not just blurting them all out at once.
Right.
And the truth is that's not necessary during your pitch. It is necessary during due diligence, but not in a chicken little sky is falling kind of way, but in a like, look, here are the risks that we've identified. These are real risks.
Yeah.
This is why we don't think they're a problem, or we think we can overcome them, or that we think that they're minimal, but these are real risks that we've identified. And as an investor, I appreciate that because it shows me that you really have a realistic view of your business and the market and the opportunity. And if I really believe that you have a realistic view and you're still actually authentically optimistic, that's a really good combination.
Yeah.
Right? If I think you're authentically optimistic but are oblivious or turning a blind eye to a whole bunch of problems, like that's scary. So it's a roundabout answer, but I think that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, it answers the question definitely. And what I would say is like, going back to the confidence thing, it's so important for an entrepreneur. And like, you often hear about that kind of like, unbridled like optimism, but like weighing that with realism and understanding that things will go wrong, and like you just need to know that those are learning experiences, and hopefully that they're educating you on what's right with your company, what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, or sometimes shit just goes wrong.
Right. Unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, right?
But I mean, there have been examples of companies, I can't think of any off the top of my head, although, there's one that Jason Calacanis invested in that did this, but they burned through like 75% of their cash from an initial investment, and then the founder was like, oh shit, it turns out this totally won't work, but I want to use the remaining 20%. They've gone back to their investors and said, like, I want to use the remaining 25% to do this completely different thing, which I've learned might be useful based on the failings of all this other stuff. And instead of saying, yeah, give us our money back, the investors were like, yeah, what the hell do we have to lose? It's 25% of our money. We don't want it.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right.
And that actually turned out to work.
Yeah.
So
and then when it comes to formulating a pitch around that, you don't have to tell the timeline story of like what happened, because then that's going to be like 75% shit, right? Like,
right.
So you turn it around and be like, here's all the things that we've learned, and because we put forth the effort to like really dig into this problem, we understand this part of it better than anyone else.
Right. And that's why we know this thing that we're going to do is going to succeed or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what was I? It might have been with Patrick the other day. We were talking about. It was with someone in the cohort. I don't think it was Patrick actually, but we were talking about, how to talk about things, how to answer questions, for example, during like a Q&A, or when someone's, this is kind of like more publicly. You're not sitting down one-to-one with someone where you can go really deep, but you have to kind of answer. And there's a tendency when founders are faced with a question that drills into a potential issue with their business, because every business has a potential issue and weak points, right? So every founder, if they get asked a question that is about their weak points, can get nervous about that, right?
Sure.
And a lot of them tend to go the politician route, which is the bad route to go, where it's like deflect, right? Like,
you see, the thing about that,
right? Yeah. I'm not going to answer the question you asked, but I'm going to answer this tangential question where I have a talking point that's been already pre-written for me, and here's the talking point, right? Like, that's a horrible answer, because people's radar is very finely attuned to that, and like they know when you're not answering their question. So I think instead, what you have to do is, I was calling it like the Aikido answer. You have to like embrace the negativity in the question. Like, yeah, that is a big risk. In fact, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, it's a big risk. You're right about that being an issue, or that being risk, whatever that is, right? And here's why either it's a good thing, or why I don't think it's, why we can overcome it, or like turn it positive, but like embrace the risk first. Don't deny it.
Yeah.
Because denying the risk, which is essentially what you're doing. When you're deflecting, you're actually admitting the risk and providing no solution. Right? When you're denying the risk, you just look like a moron.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to embrace the risk and then talk about, like, yes, even though that's a risk, I'm fully aware of it, and I'm still convinced that this is a good idea because of X, Y, and Z.
Well, you have to also think of it from the psychological perspective, right? So, like, someone has a valid thought about your business, and they're asking you a question about it. To completely deny that their thought exists or is valid is probably a bad move when you're trying to like build a relationship, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, the truth is, they're giving you information. I mean, we talk about this, when someone criticizes your business, even if their criticism is wrong, so even if they're like completely wrong about their, if they say like, I don't know, cannabis isn't legal in California, you absolutely can't do anything. It's federally illegal. Like, if they say something that's just ignorant, right, and totally wrong, right? That's still providing you information, and the information that's providing you is you didn't communicate to them clearly.
Yes.
Right? Like, they are ignorant of information that it was your responsibility to educate them on. So you're learning some information about that. So
and maybe
it's not their fault. It's yours.
Maybe it's not even ignorance. Maybe it's you thinking that whatever it is that you're working on, be it cannabis or edibles, like maybe you think terms are like more widely known than they are.
Happens to us all the time.
It happens to us.
In fact, it happened to Kari at Nitin. So shout out to Unshackled.
Yes. Thank you, Unshackled. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, and Nitin always has. I mean, we've known him for a couple of years, and we've had he's mentored a lot of different founders that have passed through various programs, and Nitin's one of those guys that always has, I think, stellar insight and advice. Like always is like really good advice.
Definitely.
And he said something that totally snuck by. I mean, you and I are usually pretty good at telling the cohort, hey, no, you got to speak in mainstream terms and don't assume they understand the industry and blah, blah, blah. I thought we were doing a pretty good job of that. Nitin just blew us away. I mean, the Kari went down, he started talking about edibles, and Nitin stopped him, and he's like, whoa. I don't know what an edible is. And like, when I heard that, I was like, what? Oh, yeah, I guess there are people who don't know what an edible is. I hadn't thought of that, right?
Right.
But there are, and like, that might sound ridiculous to most of the people watching this show, but there are a lot of people curious about the cannabis industry who actually don't even, like, they're literally coming to you as their first source. They're like, I'm going to learn about the industry. I'll go to hear a pitch, or I'll talk to this entrepreneur. They may know very little. I mean, they should know the term edibles if they've done any research, but you might be the first point of contact. And if you are, just explaining like, oh, well, it's, cannabis infused food.
Yeah.
Like, we call those edibles. Like, oh,
well,
I get it now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
I don't know what that was, like a weird tangent. I don't know what that was.
I'm going to take this moment to, like, if you have said questions, to go to askwillow.com. Chris.
Oh, we're pimping out our companies now. Awesome.
So one of our founders, Chris Liu, founded this great company where he's basically doing, like, just, I don't know if, I don't want to ruin his
one-liner.
Yeah. I'm not going to use the one-liner. Go there if you have cannabis questions. But the reason I wanted to do that transition is because the next question actually came from him.
Okay.
So, shout out to Chris, Ask Willow. So basically, is there a standard for reporting when you're a startup to stakeholders? So investors, mentors, advisors, customers. I mean, there's so many stakeholders. So that's it's a very broad question, but I think we can speak from many of the angles, right?
Well, unfortunately, there is a standard, which is that founders typically fail to do a good job of reporting anything to anyone.
Us included.
Yes.
Could I just say that?
We I realized a few weeks ago, I was like, oh shit, I should do a quarterly report to our investors.
Quarterly, yeah, right. And is that even good enough? I mean,
for us, it is. I think you need to break out your stakeholders into categories. Obviously, your investors. I mean, I think giving your investors generally a monthly or quarterly update is sufficient. Mm-hmm. You can do quarterly. I don't think you should do less frequently than that.
Yeah.
But
and even if it's I do like the monthly updates, like especially like as an advisor, it's like getting that monthly update.
Well, that's not. I'm talking about investors. Advisors are slightly different, right? So, but investors, if they're just investors,
what if it's like
it's okay.
What if there's not a lot to report on? Is it good to send the message
There's
like
always stuff to report
hey, we're
on.
still alive. Sales are good.
Sales
or
are stagnant. We're still struggling with the thing that we never solved.
Yeah. If you have someone you could connect us to that helps out in this, it's like
So there's reporting, which is that, and I think you always have something to report, even if it's just like we've really been struggling with this, and we've learned that this path that we're going on actually isn't as easy as we thought, and here's our issues, and blah blah blah. I mean, transparency to investors, like, look, they've already invested, so they're on your team. I mean, to a large extent. I mean, that can kind of change once you get institutional capital and blah blah blah, and they get control of stuff. But I mean, at early stage, they're on your team. It's like, if I've invested in a company and they like have problems, like I want to help them. Now, there have been cases. In fact, there was one recently where I helped them, and then like eventually I just got tired of them fucking up, and I was like, I'm done. I'm going to write you off now.
Pull the cord.
Like, I'm done. I don't even want to deal with you. I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
But so I think there's communicating to different stakeholders. And for those, you divide them into categories: investors, advisors, customers. And they each have different levels of communication that they need. Obviously, customers, you obviously want a transparent but well, I wouldn't even say transparent. You want a truthful but positive spin on what's going on with customers.
Yeah.
And generally, if there's a problem, you do want to admit it quickly to customers and tell them. So, I like giving. It depends on your business, but you can have newsletters more than once every couple of weeks is usually annoying, right? So, and you can measure that stuff with HubSpot or whatever and figure out how to.
So speaking of customers, let's talk about a specific example. Pipedrive is a company that we've liked in the past.
Yeah. I still like that.
We still like it. Yeah, use it for kind of like simple sales.
We're
pipeline.
partners with them. Yeah.
They had an issue that popped up and may have lost some information. I don't know how critical it was, but
it sounded bad when they said it.
Yeah,
but I didn't actually notice the problem, so they actually scared me with their emails more than
right. It was a very transparent email, which I appreciate, right? But it's like it was almost kind of like
it was too
much.
Yeah. No. If I could talk to the CEO of Pipedrive right now, which I guess we could have called them and said this to them, but
maybe we'll.
Yeah. I did. I appreciate. So we should get some background, right? They lost some emails or whatever, and they didn't just say like, hey, they didn't just send an email saying like, hey, we apologize. We've had this issue with some emails, and we're working to fix it, and we'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
And then
literally that length of email would have been fine.
Right. And if if you have a concern or if you have a specific need, reach out to blankety blank, right? And then they could have actually measured the impact of the problem as well.
Right.
Because maybe no one would reach out and it would be like, oh, good, like let's stop freaking out about this, right? And maybe some people would have a problem. Maybe they can manually help the few people who really, really had a problem.
Because I guarantee you, on the back end, they were freaking out.
Oh, of course they were. Yeah, no, I mean, I put myself in their shoes. And I was like, oh fuck, like I would not want to be the IT dude right now that did that or whatever, right? Yeah. So, I know they were freaking out on the back end, right? So. But then they continued to communicate over the course of a few weeks, and I got more Pipedrive emails than I normally. Like I got a lot of emails. I felt like I got maybe it wasn't a lot, but it felt, dear Pipedrive, it felt like a lot, right? I got a lot of emails, and they were all really long, and these like meandering emails about how the email servers were problematic, and they were trying, and then they tried this, and they're gonna try that. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's a yes, you want to be upfront and honest with your customers, but showing them how the sausage is made is usually not helpful.
Sure.
So just saying like, yeah, hey, we're still struggling with the issue. If you are noticing anything, please have or whatever. Like periodically telling us that they're still struggling with the issue, fine, right? But I think they did this classic thing where they think everyone is them, so they're freaking out about the problem. And I don't know this to be true, so maybe I'm totally wrong, and Pipedrive, sorry if I'm wrong. But my guess is actually most of their customers didn't give a shit, but Pipedrive gave a shit and thought that everyone would give a shit and thought it was a catastrophic thing.
Yeah.
And most of their customers, I wouldn't have noticed, right? Because they lost some like old emails from shit that like, I probably would never have noticed if they, right? Yeah. Like, and I appreciate them admitting it, so that's great. Yeah. But like, I think they probably thought it was a bigger problem than it was, and they made it seem like a big problem in the way that they responded. Right. Whereas they could have just said, hey, we had an issue. If you're experiencing, if you particularly have a problem and it's critical, like please let us know through XY channel, right? In the meantime, we will let you know when we've restored everything.
Right.
Like, okay, great. Thank you for admitting. Thank you for giving me a way to like tell you if it's a particular problem for me. And, thank you for keeping me informed later. But I don't need to see like, I'm exaggerating. It wasn't this bad, but like I feel like they were like, we hired Kyle today. He's gonna I'm like I don't want to know. Right. Like he formatted the hard drive. I'm like I don't care. Like, stop telling me this. Right. Okay. But anyway, that's communicating with customers. I do want to say I want to get back to one thing about stakeholders though generally, because the question's about communicating with stakeholders. And I do think you need to keep, like I said, you do need to keep regular communications. There's your investors, total transparency with your investors, right? There's your advisors. You want to be pretty transparent with your advisors as well, right? And then, but you go down and like when you get to customers, you're not, you don't tell customers like, actually, we only have 30 days left of money in the bank, blah blah. Like, right. You don't air all of the dirty laundry to your customers. But one thing that founders do yes, it's bad that they don't communicate very much, and mea culpa, I don't either often. The other thing that they fail to do is actually use their advisors, specifically their advisors and investors, to help them. It's, when I agree to advise a company, one of the first things I tell them is, look, this is a pull relationship on your behalf. Yes. I'm not going to remember that I haven't talked to you in 3 weeks. And I might. And if I see something that reminds me of you, I might. And if whatever. But often, I'm going to forget.
Yeah. Or otherwise assume that they're giving you 1% to use your face, right?
Right. So, but I'm happy to help. That's why I agreed to be an advisor, and I want to help. So I expect to be bothered, quote, bothered by them. Like, I expect them to pull from me and say, hey, I want to have a meeting. I want to do this. Can you, help me with this? Help me with that. Do this. And a lot of founders don't utilize their advisors very well. Actually, we don't utilize not our mentors. We use our mentors, but we don't use our advisors as well as we could. Right.
In fact, I think you owe Jeff an email.
I owe Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. See, you should be do as I say, not as I do, everyone, right? You should be scheduling regular meetings with your advisors. You should be asking them when, like, hey, we have a problem, we need this. Do you know anyone who can help me with this? Do you know, you should be using them because that's what they're for. They've got equity. That's why you have them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to just wake up one morning and be like, oh yeah, I remember 3 months ago I agreed to advise Chris. I'd like to just randomly do some work that's exactly appropriate to what he needs right now. So then I'm gonna email him. That doesn't happen, right?
Right.
Chris needs to say, Ben, I need your time to do X, Y, Z, or I need your help on this. And if you're a good advisor, you'll respond. And I actually find a lot of founders are for some reason nervous to text me, because I always also said if my email is total overwhelm.
Right.
So I say, look, text me. If I'm not responding to the email, bug the shit out of me on text. I want to be bothered because I decided to advise you and I want to help you. So if I'm not responsive, it's not because I don't care. It's we had a conversation about my need for help the other day, but I'm swamped. I'm not noticing. So bother me.
Yeah.
I want to be bothered.
Yes. There's nothing stranger than having to send the email are you still alive?
Right.
Is your company operating? I don't even know.
Right. So, I generally I give my phone number out and I'm like, look, text the shit out of me whenever you want. I want to be bothered. It doesn't mean I can always respond right away, but I want to be bothered. That's my job. And I don't think founders generally do that with their advisors. I think there's generally a little bit of passivity with founders and oh, they're my advisor now. Great. I'm going to put them on my slide and go do my business and forget that I have these people who have agreed to help me.
Right.
And so that would be my advice.
Okay. So we talked about advisors, investors, customers. One thing I would say about
customers, partners, there's other stakeholders too, right? Yeah.
Plenty, right? The one thing I would say is in what I also noticed with young founders is start collecting those emails. Your email communications is still the most solid way to communicate with your tight users, right? It's also quickest way to a sale. So collect the emails, communicate through it frequently. I've settled on kind of the bi-weekly thing. I feel like a weekly email these days is overwhelming. Once a month is
I get annoyed by weekly emails, but I think most people probably do. Yeah. Every 2 weeks. I like every 2 weeks. I agree with you.
Every 2 weeks. If you feel otherwise, let us know.
Yeah, this isn't a law of physics.
No. It's just trying to be empathetic towards people's inboxes, right? Yeah. Okay, so any last thoughts on that? We talked
on communicating to those groups.
Communicating groups. We talked a lot about communications today, transparency, confidence.
Yeah, we did.
You kind of kept it all in line with that.
I do have a last thing to say.
Okay.
Learn to communicate effectively. I think a lot of founders don't realize the importance of being able to communicate effectively, and I mean both verbally and written. And if you have a difficult time speaking extemporaneously or in public, go to Toastmasters or something. Go practice.
Just go talk.
Right?
Yeah.
If you struggle, if people complain, you should ask people close to you, do my emails suck? Do I sound like a moron? Whatever. And people who will tell you the truth, because not everyone will.
Right.
If they do, go learn how to write. Take a writing class. I don't know. Take a writing class. Read Eats, Shoots, and Leaves so your grammar isn't bad.
Not to sound not to sound like an old man or a curmudgeon, but it's like this day and age, it's becoming a big struggle. Like as far as writing quality goes. Like,
yeah, and I get that there's a whole generation that feels like it's not important because you can LOL and emoji your way into texting people. Like that's fine, but it doesn't actually work for business communications, and especially for communicating to investors or other serious stakeholders.
Huge turnoff, right? It's like bad grammar,
misspellings, like misuse of words, like it's just it can be an enormous turnoff, and it can turn a potentially awesome opportunity into something that they're not even looking at because they just assume the founder is whack.
Yes. So please, for God's sake, or whoever's sake,
for the sake of Aristotle and reason,
there you go. For the sake of Elevate
and our sanity,
proofread your emails before sending them.
Oh yeah, I want to say this because someone was freaked out about this when I said this the other day. I don't know, maybe it was you. The first startup I was at, Cryptography Research. I know this is crazy, and Paul, I don't know what camera to look at, but Paul, I hated you at the time for this, but it was fucking brilliant. It was awesome. We never wrote an email that left the company without someone else in the company reviewing the email. And if that sounds laborious, it was very laborious. It was like painstaking. However, we were all young, and we were all like under 25 at the time. And so we didn't have a lot of like experience in how to communicate and really, from a business perspective, So it really helped all of us, I think, learn how to communicate. And, you would write something and someone else would say like, actually, that's not clear to me. And it's like, oh, really? Yeah. It seemed clear to me. I'm like, no. Or, hey, does this mean this? I'm like, no, it means that other thing. I'm like, oh. And then you'd get into strategizing. Like, well, what's the best way to actually get them to do what we want? Maybe we shouldn't say this. Maybe we should say this other thing. And so it seemed really laborious. And I'll admit, like, I didn't like it at the time. But I think it made me a much better communicator via email. I know it helped other people in the office as well. And I think the quality of our communications externally was much, much better than it would have been. And, eventually that didn't last forever. Eventually the company started to grow, and those of us who had been the core of the company kind of started to get autonomy and writing our emails.
Feel a little bit more
people that
confident,
worked for us, we would be like, no, we're going to review emails before they go externally, and it was laborious for them, but actually that happened as well. Eventually that we would get comfortable with someone, and we would figure out, okay, this person now knows how to communicate properly about this. I'm not going to review the emails anymore from them. But and I know it seems a little bit authoritarian. But it was much more. It wasn't done in an authoritarian way. It was done in a very collaborative way.
Yeah.
And
we still
and
do
it was
that.
super valuable.
We still do that, right? Every template.
Not always, but yes, templates we do definitely.
Templated emails.
Yeah.
Definitely checking just to make sure they're as effective as possible.
Right. And sometimes we
or
fuck up, right?
Critical emails.
Yeah. Even if you're really good communicator, sometimes you fuck up by mistake. Yeah. And you need someone else to, look over your shoulder. And
it's like, are you trying to be an asshole in this sentence? Because you are.
Right. Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
Right. All right. Well, let's end on that note.
The Inadvertent Asshole. Is that the title of this episode?
I was going to go with transparency, but inadvertent asshole is okay. No, but what I would say is please, this communication piece is super important. I think we're actually going to kind of change some things around with the program because of the way we feel.
Yeah, we
about
are.
it.
Cohort 2, we're going to do a little bit different. Yeah.
It's just it's something for some reason that is being lost in education, and it is still very important in business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how you feel about education.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Next
not working.
episode. Yeah. Or never.
I have no idea why education totally is not effective.
Thank you again to the Elevate team for busting your ass over the last couple months. Pulled this conference together super quick. And it's going to be awesome. We got some great speakers. We get to debut our companies to the world.
Yeah.
And we get to put a cap on Gateway 01 and start focusing on the next cohort.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it.
All right.
So, come see us Tuesday.
Yeah.
Elevate. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Talk to you soon.